Hi guys! Welcome to Lines in Between podcast, where we talk about faith, mental health, and all the in-betweens. I'm Kath,
And I'm Jeth.
and today we're gonna have a conversation on celebrating wins and grieving losses.
Siguro tell me muna why all of a sudden grief and wins yung you want to talk about tonight.
Well, it's actually because recently, yung kuya ko passed the ALE or Architecture Licensure exam.
Congrats.
Congrats. What happened was, nandito lang ako nun sa bahay. I was getting ready. And then, narinig ko, biglang sumigaw si mama. And then, she said, ganyan. Sabi ko, bakit? Ganyan. And then, she said na, pasado si kuya, ganyan. And, we were having that conversation while I was upstairs. Tapos, she was downstairs. So, talaga kami.
Sigawan.
Sisigawan talaga kami. And, all of our family na nandito sa bahay were celebrating. And then, I just had a moment na after ko sumigaw from the second floor to the ground floor, I closed the door of my room and I cried. As in, I wept. And I honestly couldn't figure out why. I know that I was so happy for him. As in, sobrang saya ko, and I really prayed that he would pass. I know how it feels to fail at something that you worked hard for. So for those of you who don't know, I mentioned in the last few podcast episodes that I took the CE board exams last April 2023 and I failed. So that's the context of our conversation. Sa sobrang lungkot ko, napaluhod ako. As in, parang nanghina ako in a way. As in, I felt so weak while crying. And the first words na sinabi ko when I cried was, "It's okay, sweetheart. It's okay." Because I saw my younger self crying. As if something was not handed to her or something was taken from her. And so I told the young me na, it's okay, sweetheart. It's okay.
Naalala ko yun, nagdadrive na ako nun eh. Kakalabas ko lang ng office nun. Tapos sabi mo, saan ka na? Yan, ganun yung intro mo nun. Narinig ko, nanginginig yung boses mo. Tapos alam ko na parang pinipigilan mo umiyak or galing ka na sa iyak. You were telling me na you are happy na pumasa si Nicole. And at the same time, sinasabi mo lang na ito yung nag-trigger sa na-feel mo. Na-remember mo yung time na nag-fail ikaw sa board. And para siyang contrasting feeling. You are happy for at the same time you are hindi ko alam kung sad yung tamang word or grief. You are grieving naman yung loss mo at that time. Feeling ko yun lang yung na-feel ko that time. Feeling ko literal na iyak tawa. Ganon.
Yeah, because I was happy for him and at the same time, I was filled with so much grief. It was because when I failed, that's the only thing I felt. I felt the grief so heavily. Because I've always put my hope in passing the boards. I worked hard for it and I sacrificed a lot of things for it. I guess, looking back, I know that I was being redirected to a completely different path. I know now that it was really a redirection for me. Because I don't know what choices I would make if I had passed the boards. My grief resurfaced because I remember the time that I got to know yung results. I remember waking up 5 a.m., having literally no sleep, waiting for the results. And when I was looking for my name, I didn't see it. And you were the first one to comfort me. Tapos, the hardest part was telling my parents. So, I told my mom na hindi ako pumasa. And we both cried. That experience resurfaced when si kuya, pumasa siya. I feel like nothing can prepare you for when grief comes. I told one of our friends this. Something I learned about grief is that sometimes it never really goes away. You just learn to live with it. It's like a ball in a jar, and it starts off as the jar is small, and almost every time something pops up or the jar is moved, the ball hits the wall. The ball is the grief. Along the way, you learn to live your life again, to move forward. Grief resurfaces less and less. Maybe on special occasions, maybe on other times, but not so often when it first happened. But it's still there. You just learn to live with it. And I want to make this podcast episode to encourage someone that it's okay to celebrate wins and grieve the losses. Both can exist at the same time. I don't ever see myself getting over failing because there are things that in our lifetime we can't get over, like the loss of a loved one. For example, the loss of a person that really mattered to you. You never get over it. You just learn to live with it and painfully live with it. You celebrate where you are now, but you grieve what you've lost or who you lost.
Along the way.
Yeah. So that's why I want to talk about this specific topic. And I actually want you also to share, is there anything in your life that has put you in a situation where you are celebrating the wins and at the same time, you grieve the loss?
Nung bata pa kasi ako, lagi ako may medal. So, meron ako lolo, tsaka lola. Sila lagi yung umaakit sa stage kasi yung parents ko, hindi sila yung nagpalaki sa akin, basically. And nag-work sila para makapag-aral ako nung bata pa ako. So, that time, laging contrasting yung feeling ko tuwing ganun. Isasabitan ako ng I know achievement nung bata pa ako. Pero there's a void in my heart na longing ako for them to come home. And hindi lang basta magsabit ng medal, ganun. It's the simplest thing to do kahit sino naman pwedeng umakyat with me doon. But to know how hard it was to achieve it. Kasi noon, pagka, for example, meron mga quiz-bee, naalala ko noon, meron akong teacher nung grade 2. Sa sobrang strict niya magturo, naalala ko hanggang ngayon, naka-embed sa mind ko yung itsura niya, yung hikaw niya, yung itsura ng face niya. Sobrang sungit niya sa school. Tapos, dahil ilalaban ako for a quiz bee nung time na yon and walang time mag-review sa school, inoffer niya yung time sa weekends sa bahay niya. Sabi niya, sige, magpahatid ka kay lolo mo. Ganto ganyan. Punta ka sa amin, doon tayo mag-aaral. So, nag-aaral lang kami doon. As in, every Saturday, nire-review niya ako ng gantong subject, ganto ganyan. May papa-exam siya sa akin. Doon lang ako sa sala nila. Bigyan niya ako ng papel. Tapos, sobrang hands-on niya Tapos, checkan niya. Mapapakainin niya ako ng merienda habang nag-check siya. Those things, hindi na yun alam ng parents ko. Those are the stories na gusto ko sana alam nila. And those moments, yung what I've lost along the way. Parang, nandun na lang sila sa dulo. Nung time na yun. I hope I had the chance and the space to tell them yung day-to-day life, nangyayari sa school, ganito. Basically, nakikibalita na lang kasi sila kapag uwi sila, o kamusta si, pagka nangamusta ko, summarize na lang yun ganito nangyari, ganyan. Kwento sa kanila na ng lolo ko, mga kalokohan ko.
Is it correct that iba pa rin talaga when it's actual day-to-day?
Na kasama mo sila.
Just,
Nafe-feel ko yung grief niya, but not as much as before, nung bata pa ako. But there's a part of me grieving that.
Yeah.
Na I hope nandun sila. I hope na-witness nila yung struggles, na-witness nila yung mga ganong moments na naging part sila noon. But although you are celebrating yung mga bagay na yun and they're celebrating with you, naalala ko nun, dadalhin kami sa Jollibee, sa Tagaytay, o kaya bibila ng laruan, ganyan. Pero, iba pa rin kung nag-journey sila with you.
Yeah.
Tingin ko yun yung something na naalala ko lang right now. Na napunta ko sa situation na gano'n. A lot of times actually. Almost every year. Nasa gano'n akong situation. Na parang in comparison to the achievements, parang mas gusto ko na kasama lang sila araw-araw. Ganun. Wala pa nun dating video call. Wala pa nung mga Facebook.
And even if meron, it's really hard.
And it's harder na wala.
Actually.
Dati meron lang Yahoo. Yung nasa gilid lang ng yung kusang lumalabas.
Ano ang tawag doon?
Yahoo Mail?
Yahoo Mail yata.
Yan, parang...
You can send stickers.
Oo, yung...
Diba?
Salamat po. yung kalabaw na maraming salamat
Baka
po.
Gen Z
Yun ba yun?
wouldn't know.
Basta yun yan. So, naalala ko noon, may times na magko-computer ako. I-check ko yung mga online people sa Yahoo ko. Ang nakalagay lang naman sa Yahoo ko noon, 3 lang eh. Isang pinsan ko, tas nanay at tatay ko. Checking ko lang kung may kahit isang online doon. Dahil nga working sila, yung oras na kahit after school, di pa rin sila or wala naman kaming personal computer noon. Maisipan lang nila mag-computer, ganyan. Wala, hindi ko makikita. So, wala rin akong balita tungkol sa buhay-buhay nila. So, that's also one of the things that I was grieving. Na I grew up not knowing what my parents love to do, what they like to eat, how they spend their days when they're bored. So, ngayon ko na-realize how much I grieved yun nung bata pa ako. May times na tatakbahan ko na lang yung grief by living with it. Na tinanggap ko na lang na baka ganun talaga. Wala, mag-rationalize ka na lang bilang bata para hindi ka masaktan. And as a child, no one knows how to grieve. To grieve yung mga what hurts them. And it's something na ituturo. And it's important na may someone ka nilo-look up pagka it's time to grieve. Kasi pag hindi mo nakikita yon, you don't know how to honor yung grief na napifeel mo. Yung loss. Ganon.
So, what has your relationship with grief looked like in the past years? How did it grow from before up to now that it has a space in your life that you're not running away from it anymore?
Ito guys, hindi to biro or something na pretentious, ganun. But I learned how to grieve when I come to know Jesus. As in, before that time, marami akong numb moments. Hindi ako makafeel ng emotions properly. Because I was used to analyzing it, hindi feeling it. Parang used to lang ako sa mga times na, for example, ayan, may nangyari. For example, may naka-hurt sa akin. True words, ganyan. Instead na ako, grabe ka naman, ganyan, bakit mo sinabi sa akin yun? Ganyan. Tahimik lang ako.
Why?
Matitake ko yun, information lang. Tapos dala ko yun buong araw. Hindi ko sasabihin yun sa tao. Ako, isip lang ako na isip. Bakit sa akin sinabi yun? So, baka ganito, baka ganyan. I was analyzing yung dapat na feel ko. So, parang I was more on analyzing why it is happening. And tingin ko yun yung part of me running away from feeling yung hurt, yung pain. And before, dahil when I was reading the Bible, I learned how important communication is. Doon nag-start na matutunan ko i-communicate yung nafe-feel ko. Na
From the Bible?
Oo.
Wow.
Kasi parang marami akong nakita before na kung sinabi niya lang to dito, siguro hindi siya nasa situation na ganon. Ganon. Yung parang nag-analyze pa rin yata yung brain ko pag ganon. Pero one of the reasons why ko natutunan yun was because Jesus commanded to bear one another's burden. And how would I know if someone is burdened by something if I don't ask them? Tinry ko naman mag-ask. So, nag-ask ako, ganyan. Nung sinabi niya, hindi ko alam paano i-receive. As in, miyak siya sa harap ko tapos Ganito pala yun, ganun. So, hindi ko alam, hindi ko na-take care ng maayos yung first time na nag-ask ako. So, from that mistake, may mga scenarios na kung ako pala yun, I needed someone that will listen to me. I needed someone na mag-comfort sa akin. Parang ganun pala yun. Nung ako naman yung nasa time na ganoon, may someone na nakinig sa akin properly. And dun ko natutunan yung impact niya sa'yo.
As a person.
Oo, and yun yung one of the first times na nakapag-grieve ako properly. Yung first time na I could cry properly. I could be sad properly. I was just telling the story. And it's the first time na hindi ako nag-iisip kung ano ba dapat ko ma-feel. Just cried. And natutunan kong maging malungkot pag kailangan malungkot. Natutunan kong hayaan lang. Basically, natutunan kong i-validate yung grief. Because, yun yung first time pala na nakapag-grieve ako. I believe grief is a natural response. Hindi siya yung parang in-schedule mo or hindi siya something na pinipilit mo gawin. It's a natural response when something is important to you na take away. By any means. I think yun.
That's how your relationship with grief grew. So you mentioned the Bible and your relationship with Jesus that has helped you validate not just grief but your emotions. My question to you is, how did God show up in your grief?
Before there's a place where I can grieve and just feel the emotions I need to feel. I would just be there, tahimik, away from everybody. But sometimes, yun yung mga time na I feel Him the closest. When I'm alone with Him. When I want to be alone with Him. But there are times na I don't need to go somewhere. Kailangan ko lang balutin yung sarili ko ng kumot. And it feels like I'm away from everything. May time na ganun before. And doon ako magpe-pray and I would find myself crying, telling Him, Lord, why ganito yung family namin? Why ganito sila sa akin? Doesn't matter where you are. But there are times that I would feel safe telling Him how I truly feel. And there are times na I would tell Him words I can't speak sa isang person. Basically, He was there in all of those times na nag-grieve ako. Kahit saan man yon. And I know that because He would always lead me to what is true. And what is loving. And what is His promise. It always ends like that. That's why I tell people, huwag ka mahiya sabihin kay God yung nararamdaman mo no matter how strong it is, no matter how big it is. I mean, kung paano mo sabihin. You don't have to pretend like doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
You don't have to behave as if pag hindi ka ganito, papaluin ka. Because He is God and He can handle whatever you are feeling.
Yeah, that's true.
And He won't judge you for what you feel. And telling Him how you feel might seem you're talking sa hangin. Seems like hangin yung kausap mo, pero in reality, those words are heard and you are seen and your emotions are felt with Him. There's not a time na hindi nag-lead sa truth yung grief na naramdaman ko. Merong nag-take ng time. Wrap up ko lang and I want to say something and ask you something.
Yeah.
Basically, it's one of the restorations that happened to me when I came to know Jesus. My emotional self. Yun yung isang bagay na na-lose ko growing up. My emotional self. Kasi I had to cope a lot and I had to survive different situations. And I had to grow up fast. Ganun.
Yeah.
And along the way, hindi ko nare-realize how much my emotional self is affected. And it's one of the things I was thankful and grateful when I came to know Jesus.
Mm.
I was able to feel what I need to feel. And ano yun hindi magically happen. It was almost like program na kailangan ko ulit matutunang maka-feel. It was putting me in situations where my emotions are stimulated and I need to honor it every time.
Mm. You know what I see in that? He is refining you in that way. For you to become the person He designed you originally to be, you have to go through the process that
Hindi pala program, process.
you have to go through a process that He has laid out for you
Mm.
so that you will become not just spiritually healthy, you know what? Emotionally healthy.
Mm.
You were gonna ask me a question?
I was gonna ask you a question. When I was driving tapos tumawag ka, somehow meron akong assumption of what you would feel. Remember mo anong sinasabi ko sa'yo?
It's okay.
Mm-hmm. It's okay, you're not a bad person.
Yeah, I remember.
Why do you think we feel like we're a bad person for being happy for someone and grieving our own?
Celebrating the wins of other
Oo.
people and grieving our
Our own
losses. Well, I think it's because of the guilt and the shame that we feel for having or feeling the grief. I asked myself that time, why didn't I just celebrate it? It didn't necessarily stop me from feeling the happiness and the celebration, how proud I am of Kuya, but it stopped me to remind me that it exists.
Mm.
And I feel like sometimes when faced with situations that put us in the middle, we feel shameful for feeling the more difficult emotion. For example, happiness is easier to feel sometimes, and grief is harder to feel. My assumption and my take on this is maybe sometimes we feel like we're a bad person for being happy and sad at the same time, or being excited and sad at the same time, because we think that the more difficult emotion to feel, yung existence nun makes us a bad person. Dapat easier to feel emotions lang, like excitement, yun nga, happiness, yung
Alam
ecstatic ka.
alam ko na yung parang we don't want to kill the joy.
Yes!
Kaya may
Yes!
mga kaya pala may
Exactly!
mga term na ang KJ nito.
Exactly!
Mm.
So that's my assumption. My assumption is we don't want to be that person
Mm.
who kills the vibe or who steals the joy from the situation. Because not everyone is capable of accepting that these two emotions can exist at the same time. Taking it also from what you were saying a while ago about how your relationship with Jesus and the Bible has taught you to feel again, I was the opposite. Because my relationship with Jesus hid what I truly feel. Because now I can say, this was back in 2020. Of course, a lot has changed. For me, it was very different because I now had somehow like a scapegoat. For example, whenever I would feel sad, I would always say, no, but the joy of the Lord is my strength. Or all things work together for good to those who love Him, those who are called according to His purpose. So, I memorize verses whenever I read them repeatedly. And it was a bad thing for me at the beginning of my relationship with Jesus because I always used scripture or Bible verses to not feel my emotions. I was a Christian back then, so far from my emotions. I didn't see that I had the space to. My newfound relationship with Jesus back in 2020 has taught me that because Jesus redeems and restores, now I'm this completely different person who only feels
With joy.
happiness, joy, excitement, fulfillment. I didn't realize that for all of us, it is a process we go through. That redemption, restoration, or wherever God is leading us, it is a process. That's why there are things we go through that does not happen in a snap of a finger like Thanos.
Yun nga, hindi naman siya ganun yung point of knowing Jesus na malus mo na yung negative or harder to feel na emotions. Parang you are a very, very, very good Christian dahil you're always happy, you're always vibrant, and
On fire.
that's not the point of knowing Him. The point of knowing Him is that He knows who you are and He knows how to lead you in all of that.
How to lead you in all of your emotions.
No matter what it is.
Yeah, that's true.
Because he also designed us to have those emotions in us. Part siya naman eh. Design natin as human beings. So why would we throw it away? Why would we throw away something intricately nilagay sa atin?
Yeah,
Ganun.
that's true. Siguro as we end, I just want to encourage someone who is listening to this na if there is a situation in your life that is putting you in a place that you are feeling an emotion that is easier to feel and at the same time you have to grieve or makes you feel sad or it makes you feel disappointed, discouraged, I just want you to know that can exist at the same time and that it doesn't mean you're a bad person. It doesn't make you less worthy or doesn't make you less of a believer in Jesus. If you are one, I want you to know that emotions are welcomed in the presence of God. And I want to encourage you to make space for yourself to acknowledge that those emotions are present, whatever they may be. Hindi man grief, hindi man happiness and grief, whatever that emotion is, I just want to encourage you to give yourself freedom to feel. No matter how tempting it is to say, no, but God is here. Yes, God is here. And it is painful. You know, I see it all the time with Jet. We talk about it a lot na we always know that no matter the circumstance, yes, God is here. And it's also painful or it's also filled with grief. That God is present in the harder to feel emotions. He will never say, hindi pwede yan. Ayusin mo yung sarili mo. I know most of the upbringing in our generation was like that. But I'm telling you that when we don't let ourselves feel, when we are in the presence of God, we project onto God those who made us feel like the only emotions accepted are the ones that made us look good.
And I want to say naman to these people na someone said to you na why can't you be happy for me or why can't you just be sad with me? It's not your fault that some other people or someone feels that way. But there's a way to meet one another in the middle because both of you feels different things pero valid yun pareho. For example, meron kayong kaibigan na you want to celebrate with you, but that person can't because meron siyang nafe-feel na something and you feel neglected dahil
Hindi ka
or
niya ma-celebrate.
oo, hindi ka niya ma-celebrate dahil maybe hindi mo na feel neglected. Maybe you feel like the person is selfish kasi parang ginagawa niyang about him or
Him.
her. There's a way to meet in the middle and honor both of your emotions because it can exist at the same time. And I've been in that situation countless of times. And I also felt selfish. I also felt like other people are selfish. I felt both ways. And I just realized na, we can just feel it together. Both of it.
He does this all the time with me.
We can celebrate this parang we can celebrate this without neglecting my grief. And we can grieve also without neglecting your win. Parang ganon. It's by making space for you and other people to feel the emotions we are designed to feel.
Wow.
Yan lang.
Oh, thank you so much, love, for being here. I really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for watching this podcast episode. If you enjoyed, you may watch the episodes before this one. And subscribe.
We also have other social media accounts. Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. It's called Jeth and Kath, where we put our
Food, travel,
travel,
and life experiences.
basically mga gusto namin gawin sa buhay. And memories